The Panthers, if they're struggling, like if they decided to pay Miles Sanders, it should be the easiest thing in the world to decide to pay Brian Burns, right? If you're paying the position no one wants to pay, you should darn sure be willing to pay the guy that everybody wants to pay off your team. Yesterday we mentioned it, right? And this is where, this show is going to try to build upon itself a little bit. And this is The Drive with Tim Donnelly, our second edition here on 99.9 The Fan. Yesterday, Dennis and I were chatting on air, and we said the Panthers need to sign Brian Burns to an extension. And we're like, yeah, they needed to do that yesterday. And we moved on as if it was commonplace. And I realized it's the first show we hadn't explained why. Here's why. Because he's really gosh darn good. And if you need more, I'll give you more. They need to get him an extension because they reportedly passed on 2 first-round picks in a trade for Brian Burns from the Rams. Plus, by the way, it was 2 first-rounders and like a third or a second, right? It was and more.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So first of all, that gives up your negotiating power because it's not great when you've already told the person you're negotiating with and their agent that you value them tremendously because now they're not going to take any kind of discount. And they know exactly how much he's worth, right? Trades, this is another one of my theories. You'll catch up on all my theories. Trades are one of the only times where you get to learn exactly what you're worth, right? We'll use the Jared Goff, Matt Stafford trade as an example. Jared Goff learned that he is worth Matt Stafford minus 2 first-round picks because it was Matt Stafford goes to the Rams in exchange for Jared Goff and 2 first-rounders.
Yeah.
So Jared Goff probably had a little bit of a humble pie there where he recognized that the league values him as 2 first-round picks worse than a quarterback that's 5 or 6 years older than he is, however, whatever that difference is. So right now, the only thing that Brian Burns knows is that the Panthers know he is more valuable than 2 first-round picks and change. So now he's going into negotiations where he's trying to get the Panthers to pay him a bunch more, and they know, he knows, his agent knows, it's at least 2 first-round picks plus in value that they're going to have to pay him for. The other thing is, he's the only elite player on that roster according to the league. That's not according to me. That's according to the league. If you've been on ESPN.com recently, as part of their kind of season preview, they're big into rankings, they asked executives, right? As part of ESPN's 2023 NFL preseason, they went around, they pulled league executives, coaches, scouts, and players to rank the top 10 players at each team, at each position, excuse me. So, top 10 tight ends, top 10 receivers, top 10 quarterbacks, top 10 safeties, all the way on down through the entire depth chart. The Panthers, in the list of top 10 players at every position, had 1 player.
Bruh.
A single player. That player was Brian Burns. Now, that again shows the value. Right? If you've traded anything, if you've traded baseball cards, if you traded, I've been hanging out a lot with I'm staying at my cousin's house. His kids, they're into Pokemon cards, and they're trading them back and forth, left and right. If you've traded Pokemon cards, if you've collected sneakers, if you've traded anything,
comic books,
if you've ever been to like any kind of trading fair, you know that if you have 10 awesome things, you might trade one away. If you have 1 awesome thing, well, you're going to have to pay me a lot to get that out of my hands.
Yeah.
The Panthers have 1 awesome thing, according to the league. And obviously Bryce Young is expected to be, and Jonathan Mingo might be, and there's, Icky up front might be. There's a lot of other guys who hopefully they will develop into those awesome things. But as currently stated, according to the league, executives, coaches, scouts, other players, they have 1. A few honorable mentions, a few also receiving votes, but they have 1 in the top 10 at their position. Brian Burns. You're going to have to overpay for him because he knows you're in a really, really tough spot, and his agent knows you're in a really, really tough spot. You don't want to get into, and this is what we were talking about yesterday, the do-si-do that comes with franchise tags, because that gets ugly, personal feelings get hurt, and you end up paying a ton of money anyway. So go to the negotiating table, make a fair offer, right? Make whatever you think is a fair offer, and be prepared to pay about 20% more than that. Bite the bullet, do whatever you got to do. And along those lines, I want to get into this. I'm going to encourage a little bit of interaction with the listeners, right? I like hearing from you.
Yeah.
One of the ways they can do that is on our YouTube page.
Mm-hmm.
Go to YouTube, search 99.9 The Fan. It'll pop right up. We post videos. We have 5 or 6 of them up from yesterday's show. Dennis does a great job of getting them up quickly. And you can see, put a face to the voice, if you will. I don't know if you want to do that, right? The whole face for radio, cliche, all those sorts of things. But you can see us. So if you're there and you watch a segment, you like a segment, you disagree with the segment, hit the comments, right? And one of you, actually many of you did yesterday, but one that stuck out to me was we were talking about DeAndre Hopkins. And I said the Panthers, now that they see the price that DeAndre Hopkins is signing with the Titans on, they probably were like, if we knew that was going to be the price, we would have hung around in those sweepstakes a bit longer, right? We wouldn't have gone to maybe settle for an Adam Thielen and a Hayden Hurst as quickly as we did. The YouTube commenter said, yeah, for some reason there's this idea that because we don't have a top 10 receiver on the team, then we're going to go 0-17. We have very solid guys that won't be flashy but will still do well. Now, I'm going to push back a little bit, right? I at no point in time insinuated they were going to go 0-17. That would be, if they go 0-17 with the amount of talent they have, and I like Bryce Young, that would tell me one thing. They intentionally went 0-17.
Yeah, well.
They don't need the quarterback, but somebody that wants Caleb Williams or Drake May would pay a pretty penny for that bad boy.
Chicago has that pick.
No, even more so. So if they go 0-17, it's even more dramatically horrendous.
Yeah.
That's a real catastrophic maneuver. So they're not going to go 0-17. I didn't say they would. But I'm also going to say this. That roster has a long way to go. Did you just hear what I said about top 10 players at their positions? They have one. And solid but not flashy is a great description for some of the players on the Panthers. The problem is you want solid but not flashy at, I would say, a majority of positions. I would love if solid but not flashy was most of the positions on my team, but you need a couple flashy stars to win in the NFL. And the Panthers don't have that, okay? Looking at that same list, executives, scouts, players, they voted on the top 10 players at every position. You might think, hey, J.C. Horn, he's an honorable mention. You want him to be in the near future, but he's not right now. If you're going to be a Super Bowl team, he's probably going to have to be, and he's going to have to stay healthy.
That's his big thing.
Shaq Thompson is an off-ball linebacker, also receiving votes. I don't know if he'll get into the top 10. He's been around a lot, but again, if he's a player that's on your defense and J.C. Horn is a top 10 player at his position and Brian Burns is a top 10 player at his position and maybe up front you mix in someone like Derek Brown as a top 10 player at his position, then I love having flashy but solid but not flashy at the linebacker spot. Jeremy Chin, solid but not flashy, or maybe working his way in. That's fine. I'm good with that. The offense is where the flash kind of disintegrates a little bit here. There's no tight end, not even honorable mention, not even receiving votes. There's no interior offensive line, not even honorable mention, not even also receiving votes. There's no quarterback, although I do expect Bryce Young to, there's like 2 good games away from just gasoline on the hype train, and he'll be seen as significantly better.
Sure.
And no wide receivers, which is what DeAndre Hopkins would have provided, at least honorable mention.
Mm-hmm. Running
back Miles Sanders also receiving votes. It's probably top 30 is kind of where I see also receiving votes. And offensive tackle Taylor Moton also receiving votes.
Ike Ekwonu can get there.
He can get there.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. There's a couple guys that I think could get there. And in a perfect world, I don't know what the percentage is. It's not, it's not going to be minus money in the gambling world. Jonathan Mingo, if everything breaks absolutely perfect or something unexpected happens, maybe. My point is this. DeAndre Hopkins would have given you something you don't have in that top tier, well-respected, everybody kind of knows that is when they're playing their best, one of the best guys in the league. Brian Burns can be that, and you can't let it walk away. If you do think a J.C. Horn and Derek Brown are going to develop into that, you have to do everything you possibly can to help them develop into that. Because I'm just going to say it like this, you're not going to win a Super Bowl without the flashy stars. It just doesn't happen. And when it does, it's like 1 out of 30, and everybody points to that one forever, right? Yeah, you could win in the NBA with the 04 Pistons. It just doesn't happen that often, right? You're going to need a top 20 player of all time, or a top 50 player of all time, whatever it is, to win in the NBA. It's the stars argument in college. Mm-hmm. The most frustrating thing in the world is when, a recruit signs and it's somebody has to say like, oh, 4 or 5, 3-star. It doesn't matter. It's all about how you develop the player. It's true. It is about how you develop the player, but it's also about the stars. Right? You're not going to win a national championship if more than half your roster isn't 4 and 5 stars. It's been that way for a long time. Just once you get there, you also have to develop them. You're not going to win in the NFL with just solid but not flashy players. You're going to need some stars, and you're going to need solid but not flashy players. So go ahead and get the solid and the flashy, right? If you have the solid, great. Now swing for the fences for the flashy. That's what a DeAndre Hopkins move would have been.
My thing with him is that it changes everyone else's role with your receiving group. Because now Adam Thielen, who's been a number 2 wide receiver his whole career, playing alongside Justin Jefferson or Stephon Diggs, now he's got to face a number 1 corner. He's never done that in his career, really.
And Terrace Marshall is a nice piece, right? If you get him on there in 4 wide receiver sets, or Jonathan Mingo, whichever one finishes, as the 3 or the 4 wide receivers.
Yeah. I
love them against, a defensive back in a sub package.
Yeah.
I don't know if I love them as much against like the number 1 slot corner. It's there's math involved when it comes to personnel in the NFL.
Yeah.